Every day you wake up, open your eyes, and step into a life that is quietly shaped by forces you rarely notice. These forces are not dramatic decisions or major turning points. They are not rare moments of inspiration or sudden bursts of motivation. They are the small, repetitive habits that you perform automatically, often without thinking. They shape your thoughts, they guide your actions, and over time, they construct the reality you live in. Your life today is not the result of one big choice. It is the result of countless small ones repeated every single day. And the truth is simple: your habits are building your future even when you are not paying attention. Most people underestimate the power of these daily patterns. They believe change happens in sudden waves, in one emotional breakthrough, or one powerful moment. But real transformation is not loud, it is silent. It happens in the smallest decisions: the discipline to wake up on time, the choice to stay focused, the effort to stay consistent, the refusal to give up. These habits slowly build a foundation strong enough to hold the life you want. And if those habits are weak, the foundation is weak. You cannot build a strong life on unstable routines. You cannot expect greatness when your daily actions are controlled by laziness, excuses, or distractions. Every successful person you admire is not built differently. They just mastered their habits. They learned that the quality of their life depends on the quality of what they repeatedly do. They understood that winning is not an event, it is a pattern. Failure is not an accident, it is a pattern. And these patterns begin with habits that are repeated so often that they become part of your identity. The moment you choose helpful habits, you are choosing a stronger identity. The moment you allow harmful habits, you are choosing a weaker one. If you look closely at your life, you will see that your habits are already creating your results. Your mindset is shaped by what you feed your mind daily. Your body reflects how you treat it consistently. Your confidence grows or breaks based on the actions you repeat. Your success or failure is never random. It is built brick by brick through disciplined habits or destroyed through careless ones. And the biggest mistake people make is believing that habits are small or insignificant. In reality, they are the strongest force controlling your life because they operate even when you are not consciously thinking. The most powerful realization you can have is this: you are not stuck because your goals are impossible. You are stuck because your habits are aligned with your past, not your future. You want a better life, but your daily actions still reflect the old version of you. And no matter how much you wish for change, you cannot escape the reality that your habits will always pull you back into the life they are designed for. If your habits are weak, you will remain weak. If your habits are strong, you will rise with strength. Life does not respond to dreams, it responds to patterns. This means the transformation you seek will not come from waiting for the right moment. It will not come from feeling motivated or inspired. It will come from taking control of the small actions you repeat every day. Those actions determine who you are becoming. Every day you practice discipline, you become more disciplined. Every day you choose focus, you become more focused. Every day you push yourself, you become stronger. You are constantly training your mind and your character through what you repeatedly do. If you truly want to change your life, start by changing the habits that quietly shape it. When you control your habits, you control your future. When you upgrade your routines, you upgrade your life. And the moment you begin building habits that match the life you dream of, you will feel a shift within yourself, a sense of power, direction, and purpose. Because deep inside, you already know that your habits are writing your destiny. The question is simple: will you let them hold you back, or will you use them to rise into the life you were meant to live? There is a force inside your life that works quietly, without asking for permission, without demanding your attention, yet it influences every direction you take. This force is not dramatic, it is not loud, and it is not something people praise or talk about. But it is powerful enough to decide whether you rise or fall. This force is your habit system, the invisible engine that drives your daily behavior and ultimately shapes your future. Most people do not realize how much control it has over them. They move through life thinking they are making conscious choices every day, yet most of those choices are nothing more than the automatic responses created by their routines. And as long as these routines remain unchanged, their life remains unchanged. If you think about your past, you will notice something important. The biggest results in your life, both good and bad, came from actions that you repeated continuously. Nothing happened because of one moment. Everything happened because of a pattern. If you developed strength, confidence, discipline, or success, they came from habits that supported those qualities. And if you developed insecurity, fear, procrastination, or weakness, they also came from habits that fed those states of mind. The invisible force of habit silently builds your character every single day, molding you in ways you don't even recognize until years have passed. And by then, the results are so deeply rooted that they become difficult to escape. Most people live their entire lives under the control of habits they never chose intentionally. They wake up at the same time, think the same thoughts, repeat the same distractions, fall into the same patterns, and then wonder why their life feels stuck. They do not realize they have surrendered their future to the routines of their past. They are driven not by vision, but by old programming. But the truth is that the power to transform their life exists within the ability to break that programming. When you understand that habits control your direction, you also understand that changing your direction begins with changing your habits. You no longer live blindly. You take command. This invisible force becomes your greatest enemy or your strongest ally, depending on how you use it. If your habits are self-destructive, this force will push you down no matter how much you try to rise. You will feel stuck, frustrated, and powerless because the routines you follow will constantly pull you back into old cycles. But if your habits are aligned with growth, strength, discipline, and purpose, this same force becomes the engine that carries you forward even when motivation is low. It becomes easier to stay consistent, easier to stay committed, easier to stay focused because your habits take over the responsibility of pushing you. You no longer fight against yourself. You move with a natural flow toward the life you want. The powerful thing about habits is that they do not care who you are, they only care what you repeat. They do not respond to your dreams, they respond to your actions. They do not shape your life based on your intentions, they shape it based on your patterns. And once a pattern is repeated enough times, it gains the power to control your decisions, your emotions, and even your beliefs about yourself. That is why taking control of this invisible force is the most important step in taking control of your destiny. When you consciously build habits that serve you, you are no longer a passenger in your own life. You become the one steering the direction of your future. When you understand this truth deeply, a shift begins inside you. You stop waiting for miracles. You stop depending on motivation. You stop blaming circumstances. Instead, you begin crafting daily routines that strengthen your mind and elevate your life. You begin shaping your days with intention. You begin aligning your actions with the person you wish to become. And with time, this invisible force that once controlled you becomes the force that empowers you, guiding you toward a life built on discipline, clarity, and unstoppable growth. People often wait for motivation as if it is some magical spark that will suddenly transform their lives. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect feeling, the perfect wave of inspiration to push them into action. But waiting for motivation is one of the greatest illusions that holds people back from reaching their potential. Motivation is temporary. It rises and falls like the weather. It appears when life feels exciting and disappears when life becomes challenging. If your growth depends on something this unstable, you will never move consistently toward your goals. You will rise for a day or two, then fall back into old routines the moment the emotional energy fades. And this is why so many dreams remain unfinished, because they were built on feelings instead of discipline. The truth is that motivation has never been the foundation of success. It is discipline that allows you to continue even when every part of you feels tired, distracted, or unmotivated. Discipline does not ask whether you feel like showing up. Discipline does not wait for the right emotion. Discipline is a decision to keep moving forward regardless of how your mind tries to resist. It is the ability to act based on commitment, not mood. And once you understand this, you stop relying on the emotional rush that motivation provides. You start building habits that carry you through the days when your feelings try to pull you away from your purpose. Most people misunderstand motivation. They think successful people must feel motivated all the time. They assume their heroes wake up every morning with fire inside their chest, eager to chase greatness. But the truth is much simpler. Successful people feel the same resistance, the same laziness, the same doubt as everyone else. The only difference is that they do not allow those feelings to control their actions. They built discipline strong enough to override their excuses. Their habits take over where motivation fails. They understand that feelings might lie, but consistent action never does. They trust repetition more than inspiration. And because of that, they keep moving forward while others wait for the right moment to begin. Motivation is exciting, but it is not reliable. Discipline is demanding, but it is dependable. And dependable actions always create dependable results. When you rely on motivation, your progress is inconsistent. Some days you are unstoppable, and other days you collapse back into old patterns. But when you rely on discipline, your progress becomes steady and unbreakable. You become someone who shows up even when it is difficult. You become someone who pushes forward when others give up. You become someone who earns success through daily decisions instead of temporary feelings. And with time, this consistency builds a level of strength that motivation alone can never match. The freedom you want in life comes from discipline, not emotion. The transformation you seek comes from repeating the right actions long after the excitement has faded. Discipline creates momentum. Momentum creates results. Results create confidence. And confidence creates a new identity. Suddenly you begin to see yourself differently. You stop viewing yourself as someone who tries. You see yourself as someone who follows through. This shift is one of the most powerful changes a person can experience because it unlocks a version of you that no longer relies on unpredictable bursts of motivation. You become someone who acts because you choose to act. Once you accept that motivation is not the key to success, a huge burden lifts from your shoulders. You no longer wait for the right feeling to begin. You begin because you know it is required. And once you start, discipline carries you forward. You realize that your future will not be shaped by moments of inspiration. It will be shaped by your ability to keep going when the inspiration disappears. You understand that true power does not come from how strongly you feel, but from how consistently you act. That is when you finally take control of your life. When your actions no longer depend on emotion, your progress becomes unstoppable. The mind is built on repetition, and most people do not understand how deeply this truth controls their lives. Every thought you repeat, every action you perform, every reaction you fall into becomes a signal to your brain. With enough repetition, the brain begins to automate that behavior. It starts treating it as normal, familiar, and effortless. This is why habits become so powerful. They no longer require conscious effort once the mind has accepted them as routine. What feels difficult at the beginning eventually becomes natural, and what feels natural eventually becomes part of your identity. This is the psychology of repetition. Whatever you feed your mind repeatedly becomes the reality you live in, even if you never consciously chose it. When you understand this, you realize that nothing in your life is random. The way you think, the way you respond to challenges, the level of your discipline, the strength of your mindset, all of it is shaped by the things you repeat over time. If you repeat procrastination, you become someone who delays everything. If you repeat courage, you become someone who faces challenges boldly. If you repeat doubt, your confidence weakens. If you repeat focus, your discipline sharpens. The mind simply follows the patterns you set for it. This is why small actions matter so much. They may look insignificant in the moment, but every repetition is a message to your brain about the kind of person you are becoming. Most people underestimate the power of small repetitions because they are focused only on big results. They want massive changes overnight, so they ignore the tiny steps that actually create transformation. But the mind does not change through sudden miracles. It changes through steady repetition. You cannot expect to build confidence if you repeat actions that make you feel weak. You cannot expect to develop discipline if you keep repeating laziness. You cannot expect to create a successful mindset while repeating thoughts of doubt and fear. The brain learns through patterns, not promises. It becomes whatever you teach it to become through daily repetition. The beautiful thing about this truth is that it gives you complete control over your future. You do not need to wait for motivation, inspiration, or external change. You only need to choose the actions you want to repeat. At first, these new habits may feel uncomfortable. Your mind may resist, your body may struggle, and your emotions may argue against the effort. This is normal. Every new pattern requires energy before it becomes automatic, but with enough consistency, the discomfort fades. The mind begins to accept the new routine as normal. What once felt heavy becomes easy. What once felt forced becomes natural. This is how discipline grows. Slowly, silently, and powerfully. Once repetition takes over, your habits begin working for you rather than against you. You no longer have to fight for consistency because consistency becomes part of who you are. You no longer rely on feelings because your habits guide your actions automatically. The effort becomes lighter, the resistance becomes weaker, and the progress becomes smoother. This is why strong habits create unstoppable people. They do not rise because they feel strong every day. They rise because they built patterns that carry them forward even on their weakest days. When you embrace the psychology of repetition, you stop being controlled by your past patterns and start building the future you want. You realize that every repetition is a seed planted in the mind, and with time, those seeds grow into the life you live. The question is not whether repetition works. It always works. The real question is what you are choosing to repeat, because whatever you repeat, you become. And once you understand this truth deeply, you will guard your habits with intention, knowing that they are shaping your destiny one repetition at a time. There is a moment in every person's life when they realize that change is not something that happens by accident. It is not something that appears out of nowhere or arrives simply because you wish for it. Real change begins with a decision, one powerful, unwavering decision that rewrites the direction of your entire life. Most people never reach this moment because they keep waiting for their circumstances to improve, for their fears to disappear, for the perfect time to begin. They convince themselves that change will happen someday, but someday never arrives. Life does not transform on its own. It transforms when you make a firm decision to take control of your habits, your thoughts, and your daily actions. That decision is the turning point. The moment when you stop being controlled by your past and start building your future consciously. This decision is more powerful than motivation, more powerful than luck, and more powerful than circumstances. It is the inner declaration that says, I will no longer live on autopilot. I will no longer allow old patterns to define me. I will choose who I become. Most people believe they have made this decision many times, but in reality, they only made wishes, not commitments. A real decision shows itself in action, not emotion. When you truly decide to change, you do not wait for the right mood. You move because you know the path requires movement. When you truly decide to grow, you do not entertain excuses. You replace them with discipline. When you truly decide to evolve, you stop negotiating with your weaknesses and start building habits that reflect the strength you want to embody. The mind becomes incredibly powerful the moment a person makes a real decision. Doubt begins to lose its influence. Fear becomes smaller. Distractions become easier to ignore. And this happens not because the challenges disappear, but because your commitment becomes stronger than your resistance. You start seeing possibilities where you once saw limitations. You start acting with clarity where you once hesitated. You start choosing long-term growth instead of short-term comfort. That single decision becomes the anchor that keeps you steady during hard days and the fire that keeps you moving forward during slow days. It becomes the foundation of your transformation. But this decision cannot come from pressure. It must come from within. No one can force you to change. No one can give you the discipline you refuse to build. No one can fight the battles inside your mind except you. Life becomes different the moment you understand that you are responsible for the habits that shape you. You may not control everything around you, but you always control what you repeatedly do. And when you choose actions that align with the future you desire, you begin pulling your life in that direction step by step, day by day. This is why the decision to take control of your daily habits is the most important decision of your life, because it determines the quality of every day that follows. Once you make that decision, your identity starts to shift. You no longer see yourself as someone who tries. You see yourself as someone who commits. You no longer see challenges as obstacles, you see them as steps. You no longer see discipline as punishment, you see it as empowerment. You rebuild your inner world from the ground up, and slowly, the outer world begins to reflect that change. The life you want does not appear overnight, but the moment you decide to take responsibility for your habits, you begin moving toward it with purpose. And every day you honor that decision, you move closer to becoming the person you were always capable of being. This is the decision that changes everything, the decision to rise. People often believe that life changes through massive action, dramatic shifts, or big breakthroughs. But the truth is far simpler and far more powerful. Life changes through small habits repeated consistently over time. These micro habits may look insignificant, sometimes even too small to matter, but they hold a strength that most people overlook. A tiny action, when repeated daily, becomes a powerful force. A small improvement, when multiplied over months and years, builds results that seem impossible at the beginning. People fail not because they are incapable of change, but because they underestimate the value of small steps. They expect transformation to be loud, but real transformation is quiet, subtle, and built on micro habits that compound with time. The mind loves big goals but struggles with big changes. When you try to force massive shifts all at once, your mind resists. It becomes overwhelmed, exhausted, and discouraged. That is why most people quit after a few days. Their goals are huge, but their approach lacks sustainability. Micro habits solve this problem by making change feel manageable. They bypass resistance. They require no dramatic effort, no emotional force, no perfect conditions. They simply require a small commitment repeated consistently. And with every repetition, you strengthen your discipline, build your confidence, and reshape your identity. What begins as a tiny action eventually becomes a natural part of who you are. These small habits are powerful because they create momentum. When you take even one small positive action, your mind begins to shift. You feel a sense of progress, however small, and that progress makes you want to continue. This is how small steps become big wins. A person who meditates for 2 minutes daily becomes calmer over time. A person who reads 1 page per day becomes more knowledgeable. A person who does 5 push-ups daily becomes stronger. A person who spends 5 minutes organizing their goals becomes more focused. The change is slow at first, almost invisible, but eventually the compounding effect kicks in, and those tiny habits create a transformation that feels unstoppable. The beauty of micro habits is that they remove pressure. You no longer feel the weight of perfection. You no longer feel the fear of failure. You just commit to small steps that you can maintain easily. And once these steps become automatic, you can build on top of them. You grow slowly, organically, and with stability. This is how discipline is built, not through force, but through repetition. And once your habits grow stronger, your identity grows with them. You start seeing yourself as someone who stays consistent, someone who takes responsibility, someone who honors their commitments even in small ways. This identity shift is what ultimately leads to major transformation. Most people never start because they believe their actions are too small to matter. But every great achievement in life began with a small beginning. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. A powerful mindset begins with one thought. A disciplined life begins with one habit, and the person you want to become begins with one small commitment that you choose to repeat daily. If you focus on mastering micro habits, you gain control over your life in a way that feels effortless. You stop fighting yourself. You stop relying on sudden motivation. You build discipline gently, steadily, and sustainably. With time, these small steps grow into something extraordinary. The world may only notice the final result, but you will know that it was built through countless small actions that you honored every single day. That is the true power of micro habits. They turn ordinary days into productive days. They turn ordinary people into unstoppable individuals, and they turn small beginnings into massive victories. Every person carries patterns within them, patterns created by years of repetition, shaped by experiences, influenced by emotions, and strengthened through routine. Some of these patterns help you grow, but many hold you back. Negative habits, limiting thoughts, self-doubt, procrastination, and fear-based reactions become chains that quietly restrict your potential. They wrap around your mind so tightly that you begin to believe this is simply who you are. But these patterns are not permanent. They are learned. And anything learned can be unlearned. Breaking these chains requires awareness, courage, and a willingness to confront the habits that no longer serve you. It requires looking honestly at your life and admitting that some of your routines are keeping you small, keeping you weak, and keeping you stuck in a cycle you no longer want to live in. The first step to breaking old patterns is awareness. You cannot change what you refuse to see. You must be willing to look at your behaviors not with judgment, but with clarity. Why do you procrastinate? Why do you avoid challenges? Why do you fall into the same distractions every day? Why do you fear taking the next step? These questions reveal the roots of your habits. Most negative patterns form as a way to escape discomfort, avoiding effort, avoiding failure, avoiding responsibility. But choosing comfort over growth always leads to long-term regret. When you bring these patterns into the light, you take away their power. They can no longer operate in the shadows. They can no longer control you silently. Awareness breaks the illusion that you are powerless. Once awareness is developed, the next step is resistance. You must resist the urge to repeat the old habit, even when your mind tries to pull you back. This resistance is uncomfortable because your brain loves familiarity. It wants the old routine. It prefers the path with the least effort. That is why breaking old habits feels like a battle. But this battle is necessary. Every time you resist an old pattern, you weaken it. Every time you choose a new action, you strengthen a new path. Change feels difficult, not because you're incapable, but because your brain is shifting from one neural pathway to another. This discomfort is a sign of transformation, not failure. Breaking old patterns also requires replacing them with constructive ones. You cannot remove a habit and leave an empty space, because the mind will fill that space with something familiar. And that familiar thing is almost always the old habit. Instead of removing procrastination, replace it with a small, productive action. Instead of removing negative thinking, replace it with intentional gratitude or affirmations. Instead of removing distractions, replace them with focused routines that serve your goals. This approach works because it gives your mind a new path to follow. The old pattern loses power simply because you stop feeding it. The most important part of breaking old patterns is persistence. You cannot change years of conditioning overnight. You must show up repeatedly, choosing the new pattern again and again, until it becomes stronger than the old one. You will slip at times. You will have days where the old habit tries to reclaim its place. This is normal. What matters is your decision to rise again the next day. Every attempt weakens the old chain. Every repetition strengthens your liberation. When you finally break these patterns, something powerful happens inside you. You feel lighter. You feel more in control. You feel capable of shaping your future instead of being dragged by your past. You realize that the chains that once felt unbreakable were never stronger than your will. They were only strengthened by your acceptance. And the moment you stop accepting them, you begin to rise above them. Breaking old habits is not just a change in behavior, it is a rebirth. It is the moment you reclaim your power and step into a new version of yourself, one that is stronger, wiser, and fully in control of the life ahead. Discipline is the bridge between where you are now and the life you want to live. It is the force that carries you forward when motivation fades, when excuses rise, and when every part of your mind and body resists the effort. Discipline is not about perfection or constant energy. It is about showing up again and again, even when it feels difficult. Most people fail not because they lack talent, intelligence, or opportunity, but because they lack the discipline to persist. They rely on bursts of energy, sudden inspiration, or fleeting motivation, and when these disappear, so does their progress. Discipline does not rely on emotion. It relies on commitment. It is the decision to act, even when it feels uncomfortable, inconvenient, or exhausting. Without it, potential remains locked inside, waiting for someone who never comes. The key to discipline is consistency. Small actions repeated daily create habits that eventually take over your behavior. These actions may be as simple as waking up on time, focusing on a single task without distraction, or dedicating a few minutes each day to improve your mind or body. At first, these actions feel tedious, and your mind may resist. But each time you overcome that resistance, you build strength. Every act of discipline reinforces the neural pathways in your brain, making it easier to continue. Slowly, these actions become automatic, and you no longer need to force yourself. The habits carry you forward. This is why discipline is far more powerful than motivation, because it works even when you don't feel like it, even when the excitement has faded, and even when life pushes back. Discipline is also about doing what is necessary, not what is convenient. It is easy to act when conditions are perfect, when you feel strong or when distractions are absent. True discipline shows itself when none of those conditions exist. It is choosing to push forward when others quit. It is acting when you are tired, when the task seems boring, or when the outcome is uncertain. This is what separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who drift through life. Success is not born from comfort. It is forged in moments when you choose effort over ease, action over avoidance, and persistence over surrender. Another important aspect of discipline is responsibility. When you are disciplined, you stop blaming circumstances, other people, or the world around you for your results. You take full ownership of your actions and their consequences. Every success, every failure, every moment of growth or stagnation becomes yours to claim. This ownership strengthens your confidence and reinforces your ability to control your life. Discipline is not punishment, it is empowerment. It is the realization that no one can shape your life better than you, and that every day you have the opportunity to create the results you desire. Discipline also transforms your mindset. The more you practice it, the less you fear challenges, setbacks, or discomfort. You become resilient. You develop focus. You learn patience. You begin to understand that temporary pain or struggle is a necessary part of long-term growth. And over time, discipline no longer feels like a struggle. It becomes part of your identity. You stop asking whether you feel like doing the work and start asking only what the next right step is. You no longer hope for success. You create it day after day, habit by habit, action by action. The power of discipline lies in its quiet consistency. It is rarely celebrated, but it is unstoppable. It builds momentum that cannot be stopped by circumstances or emotions. Every disciplined action you take compounds into results you cannot ignore. And eventually, the life you have been striving for becomes inevitable. Not because it was easy, not because luck intervened, but because your commitment to discipline created it. When you understand this, you see that showing up every day, no matter how small, is not optional. It is the key to transformation, the key to strength, and the key to a life that reflects your highest potential. When trying to change your life, one of the most critical lessons is that simply removing a bad habit is rarely enough. The mind craves activity, structure, and patterns. If you only take something away, it leaves an empty space, and the brain instinctively tries to fill it, often with the same habit you are trying to escape. That is why so many people fail to change despite their intentions. They attack their weaknesses without providing a replacement, and the old habit quickly returns. The real power lies not in removing destructive patterns, but in replacing them with constructive ones that serve your goals, elevate your mind, and strengthen your character. Replacement is not just a strategy, it is the secret to lasting transformation. Replacing a habit begins with awareness. You must identify the behavior that holds you back and understand what it is really giving you. Every habit, even a negative one, exists for a reason. It provides comfort, relief, distraction, or escape. When you see the purpose it serves, you can consciously provide a better alternative that satisfies the same need without the cost. For example, if you habitually waste hours on distractions to avoid stress, replacing that habit with focused work or short productive breaks gives your mind the relief it seeks while moving you closer to your goals. Replacement does not deprive you, it redirects you toward growth. The power of replacement comes from the mind's natural tendency to repeat patterns. When you consistently perform the new habit in place of the old, your brain begins to encode it as the default response. At first, it may feel awkward or even forced. You may stumble, falter, and feel the pull of the old habit. This is normal. The brain resists change because it favors familiarity. But every time you choose the new habit, you strengthen a different neural pathway, gradually making the constructive behavior automatic. Over time, the old habit loses its influence and the new habit becomes your default. Replacement is not instant, it is steady, deliberate, and consistent. Another crucial element of replacement is intention. You must consciously choose habits that align with your vision for your life. It is not enough to choose random positive actions. Every replacement must reflect the person you want to become. If you want discipline, replace aimlessness with structured routines. If you want clarity, replace mental clutter with meditation or reflection. If you want strength, replace laziness with small, consistent actions that challenge your body and mind. Replacement works because it gives your mind direction and purpose, creating an internal map that guides your daily choices toward the life you envision. Finally, the process of replacement builds confidence and momentum. Each successful substitution reinforces your ability to take control of your behavior. You begin to see that you are not a passive participant in your life, but an active creator. The old patterns that once controlled you lose their grip. You become resilient to distraction, resistant to excuses, and capable of sustaining habits that lead to long-term growth. Every new habit you cultivate in place of the old becomes a building block for a stronger, wiser, and more disciplined self. Replacement transforms not only what you do, but who you are becoming, turning every conscious action into a step toward mastery and every day into an opportunity for progress. The most profound transformation occurs when habits are no longer something you do, but something you become. This is the shift from behavior-based change to identity-based change. Most people focus on doing. They want to act differently, to perform better, or to achieve specific results. But true transformation is rooted in who you see yourself as being. Identity-based habits are about aligning your actions with the person you wish to become. Instead of forcing yourself to do something because it seems necessary, you naturally do it because it is part of your identity. You don't just pursue success, you become someone who is defined by it. This is why identity is more powerful than motivation, and why habits that reflect your values and vision create lasting change. Identity-based habits begin with self-perception. The question is not, what do I want to achieve, but who do I want to become? When you define the person you want to be, every action starts to align with that identity. If you want to become disciplined, your decisions, routines, and choices reflect discipline. If you want to become courageous, your thoughts and actions reflect courage. The moment you adopt an identity as your core truth, habits are no longer a struggle. They are a reflection of who you are. You stop negotiating with yourself because acting in alignment with your identity feels natural, inevitable, and empowering. This shift turns resistance into consistency and effort into momentum. The power of this approach lies in its permanence. When habits are identity-driven, they are not dependent on temporary motivation, external rewards, or external validation. They are automatic because your mind interprets them as who you are. Every decision you make reinforces this identity, and over time the old self, rooted in hesitation, fear, or weakness, fades into the background. The new identity becomes dominant, guiding your behavior even when circumstances are challenging. You no longer feel like you are forcing yourself to act. You feel like acting is simply who you are. This internal alignment creates a sense of strength, purpose, and clarity that external motivation alone could never provide. Identity-based habits also create resilience. When setbacks occur, you do not fall into old patterns because your actions are no longer tied to emotion. They are tied to your sense of self. Temporary failure does not shake you because you are not defined by a single action or outcome. You are defined by the consistent repetition of the person you choose to be. This mindset allows you to stay committed over the long term. Even when results are slow, progress seems invisible, or the world seems against you. The strength of identity-based habits is that they endure, because they are built on your self-image, not circumstance, and they guide you even in moments of doubt. The transition to identity-based habits requires intention and patience. You must first decide the person you want to become, then align your daily actions with that vision, and finally, repeat them until they become automatic. Each repeated action reinforces your new identity, and each choice you make strengthens the person you are becoming. Over time, you are no longer a collection of behaviors. You are the embodiment of your chosen identity. This is the ultimate power of habits. They do not just create results, they create a new version of you. And when you become the person who naturally acts in alignment with your goals, success, discipline, and mastery become inevitable, unstoppable, and permanent. Consistency is the quiet force that multiplies effort into extraordinary results. Most people underestimate it because it does not feel dramatic or exciting. It does not deliver instant gratification, and it rarely produces immediate recognition. Yet, consistency is the foundation upon which mastery, success, and transformation are built. Every action you repeat, no matter how small, compounds over time. Just as drops of water carve canyons through stone, repeated habits shape your life in ways that are invisible in the moment but undeniable in the long run. The person who acts consistently is not reliant on luck, inspiration, or circumstance. They are guided by the unstoppable power of routine, discipline, and persistent effort. Consistency works because it removes the question of whether you feel like it. Motivation comes and goes, emotions fluctuate, and energy levels rise and fall. If your progress depends on those variables, it will always be unstable. Consistency ignores feelings entirely. It asks only whether you will show up again and again, regardless of discomfort, fatigue, or resistance. It turns action into habit, habit into identity, and identity into results. Over time, consistent effort develops momentum, and momentum becomes unstoppable. Small daily actions, repeated without fail, grow into achievements that once seemed impossible. The compounding effect is subtle at first, but relentless. Eventually, the results of consistency are undeniable. They are not influenced by luck, they are earned one day at a time. Most people fail because they confuse intensity with consistency. They believe that doing a lot once or twice will produce results equivalent to daily effort. They chase short bursts of performance, intense but unsustainable, only to burn out or lose progress. Consistency, by contrast, requires less intensity but more reliability. It requires showing up even when conditions are imperfect, when results are slow, and when no one is watching. It is not glamorous, but it is effective. It is the hidden engine behind every long-term success. Champions, leaders, and high achievers do not rely on short-term effort. They rely on the steady accumulation of disciplined actions over time. The power of consistency also lies in its ability to create compounding growth. Every small victory reinforces your confidence, strengthens your habits, and makes the next step easier. Each completed task, each act of discipline, each repetition builds a foundation for larger achievements. One day, you look back and realize that the life you live, the strength you feel, and the success you have achieved is not the result of a single moment. It is the result of countless repeated actions that never stopped, even when progress seemed invisible. This is why those who master consistency rarely fail. Their lives are not dependent on chance or emotion. They are dependent on repetition, and repetition always delivers. Consistency also transforms character. When you commit to showing up daily, you prove to yourself that you can be trusted. You demonstrate inner strength, resilience, and reliability. You become the person who does what they say, who honors their commitments, and who moves forward regardless of obstacles. This self-trust is invaluable because it fuels courage, focus, and determination. Without consistency, talent remains unfulfilled, ideas remain unrealized, and potential remains dormant. With consistency, however, you become unstoppable. Every small action compounds into extraordinary results, every habit reinforces your identity, and every day becomes a step toward the life you were meant to live. Consistency is not just a habit. It is the architecture of greatness built silently and powerfully, one action at a time. The life you desire is not a distant dream. It is a result of the choices you make today, every single day. Every habit you practice, every action you take, and every decision you make is like a brushstroke on the canvas of your future. If you allow inaction, distractions, or old routines to dominate, your canvas becomes a reflection of what you accept, not what you aspire to. But if you take control of your daily habits, if you act with discipline and intention, you begin painting a masterpiece of growth, strength, and success. The power to shape your destiny exists in this very moment. The question is whether you will seize it or allow another day to slip by without building the life you truly want. Daily discipline is the gateway to transformation. It is easy to underestimate its impact because results are not immediate. Growth happens in silence, often unnoticed, until one day the change is undeniable. When you commit to consistent effort, you strengthen not only your habits, but your character. You become resilient to challenges, resistant to distractions, and unwavering in pursuit of your goals. Every small decision to act in alignment with your purpose compounds into a force that shapes your reality. You begin to realize that success is not a matter of luck or circumstance. It is a matter of showing up, one disciplined action at a time, no matter how small it may seem. The power of habits lies in their ability to define who you are, rather than what you do. When your actions reflect the person you wish to become, discipline becomes effortless because it is rooted in identity. You no longer force yourself to work hard or resist temptation. Your choices naturally align with your vision. This alignment is profound because it allows your habits to carry you forward even when motivation fades or challenges arise. The life you want is created by the person you are becoming through your daily actions. Every repetition, every choice, and every moment of consistency builds a stronger, wiser, and more capable version of yourself. This is the essence of transformation. Change is not sudden. It is a process of accumulation. One day of discipline may feel insignificant, one habit may feel too small to matter, and one decision may seem powerless. But the truth is that every single effort counts. Each step compounds with the last, and over time, the momentum becomes unstoppable. When you honor your habits, you honor yourself. You honor the life you are capable of creating. The person you were yesterday becomes a stepping stone, not a limitation. The person you are today becomes the architect of your future. The life you dream of does not require perfection. It requires persistence, repetition, and the courage to rise every day in alignment with your purpose. Ultimately, the life you live tomorrow is written by the actions you take today. Your habits are your building blocks, your discipline is your foundation, and your daily decisions are the pillars of your destiny. You hold the power to rise above excuses, overcome fear, and replace old patterns with new ones that reflect the person you are capable of becoming. Every day is an opportunity to shape your identity, strengthen your will, and construct the life you desire. The moment you embrace this truth, you stop waiting for miracles and start creating them. Your future is not a distant possibility. It is a product of your habits, your discipline, and your unwavering commitment to becoming the person you were meant to be. The life you want begins now, and it begins with you.